Well, everybody, in Doing A in Buffalo, most segments we host the guests. Well, you know what? In our premier wine and spirits segments, wine manager and expert Bill Mahoney welcomes us into his world. And today, Bill is here to talk about wines with what you call a noble rot. It sounds like a bad thing, but it actually makes a wine a good wine, right, Bill?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you know, if you were to look at these bunches of grapes on the vine, they look disgusting. They're all shriveled up and brown. Here's a picture of it right here. You can see in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. This is the development of a particular grape bunch called Semillon, and up in the upper left-hand corner is when it hasn't yet turned to veraison and got its color, and then slowly over the season, it starts to get infected with this rot and then shrivels up to what you see in the bottom corner. So it's literally the grape that's aged as well. Well, it basically is rotting, is what it is. And when you have rot in a particular bunch, it's actually called Botrytis bunch rot. And two things can happen. Either it can get gray rot, which is the bad type of rot, and it will make the wines taste rotten. And then the good kind of rot is actually this Botrytis cinerea. And that's what some of these noble rots and wines made from this kind of fungal disease contain. Now, it's completely harmless and nothing will affect you or anything. And believe it or not, you may have had wines with this rot in it already and never known it. You know, if you've ever heard of French Sauterne or Hungarian Tokaj, these are all wines that have this particular bacteria in it. And what happens is, everyone's had ice wine and is familiar with it. And you know that not only is it frozen on the vine, but the one thing that sort of makes it similar to other dessert wines is it's late harvested. And so the sugar concentrations get much more rich and it's more unctuous. It's not as light on its feet as regular white wine would be, or even Riesling. It's got more of a texture. When you have a wine that's infected with noble rot, it's not only more concentrated, it's not necessarily frozen on the vine, but it just gets so much more complex, so much more aromatic, and it has a really particular aroma where I kind of envision that as being sort of like honey poured over fresh hay. And it's really interesting. And you can tell the difference here. We'll do a little experiment today. On your left you have a glass, which is your typical dessert wine, late harvest, actually Riesling. This isn't an ice wine, it's not frozen on the vine, but you can take a smell of this and then a little sip, and you'll probably really like it. It's a nice wine, but in comparison, I mean, that's pretty good. It's lovely, yes. We've actually done this before. This is the Deinhardt Baron Auslese, which was always a really big hit. But on your right, you have a wine that is Botrytised. It has the noble rot. Now take a smell of that and you're going to smell a big difference right there. See how much more pungent that is and aromatic? And you take a sip of this and you're going to see so much more concentration, so much more delineation of flavor, and it's just going to go on and on. You still tasting it? Yes. It's just night and day difference between the two. And you get like this richer. You get honey, you get marzipan, you get apricots, you get just all these really nice concentrated flavors, and you're still going, right? It's still tasting it. You'll taste that for like a minute after you swallow. That's lovely. It's just delicious, and it's not cloyingly sweet. It's not syrupy. This one is sweeter, right? And this has got nice, vibrant acidity. Winemakers in Europe call this magic. Try this again. Go right ahead. It's hard to put down. But yeah, this is one of those things that doesn't happen all the time. It's you know, kind of a rare occurrence in certain situations. You can actually spray your vineyards with this bacteria to help in modern winemaking techniques. Like you'll see that we do this in California. They do it in Australia. This late harvest Semillon, as a matter of fact, is Australian. But the famous regions in the world are like Sauterne, and that's where you'll find Chateau Yquem. It's one of the most famous, also one of the most expensive producers. They're several $100s a bottle. But what makes these unique are these wines can age for 100 years. They can go a very long time. Not in all cases, but some of your best examples can. Another region, the most famous regions are in Sauterne and in Hungary, where they make Tokaj, and then also in the Rheingau portion of Germany, where they make Baron Auslese and Trockenbaron Auslese. And I know these all sound like a bunch of names that I'm just throwing out that people might not necessarily relate to, but these are wines that you'll find in all of our stores, and they're good alternatives to ice wines. You can see the similarity here. I mean, it's in the same ballpark, but I think it's much more interesting and much more complex.
So when someone comes into the store, Bill, and you want to try something like this, what do you ask the folks at Premier?
Well, so you could say specifically, if you want to try a wine with noble rot, you could just say that, or you could say, you know, where are the wines with Botrytis cinerea or Botrytis, and we can show you those. But these will be all in our dessert wine category. There are some wines that are what would be considered non-dessert wines, like in the Loire Valley. There's a late harvest Vouvray. Remember the Domaine Vaufougé Vouvray?
Yeah.
Well, they make a certain style Molieu, which is even later harvested, much more concentrated and sweet, and has this Botrytis infection.
It's quite lovely. And I must say, just taking a look at the display, this wine just reflects the season. They go from a beautiful yellow to an amber color, to a deep color. They so reflect this time of year.
That's right. It's all about harvest, and you know, the deeper color they get, the older they get. So if you were to, you know, open up a Sauterne from, you know, the 40s or 50s, it would be really kind of a golden brown color. The younger ones are more of that light color that you see. Now, ice wines from Canada and everything, they can go a little bit, you know, like 10 years or so, but they certainly don't have the lifespan that some of these great wines from Europe have.
Now, Bill, these bottles that you open, this looks like an ice wine bottle.
It does, yeah. Part of the reason why they're so small and skinny is just because it's very, very labor intensive to make this. It's kind of like the difference between chocolate and fudge. So where you have wines like this, it's very select harvesting because this particular bacteria infects bunches of grapes at different stages. So when you harvest, not all of the grapes have gotten to that shriveled, raisin-looking, rotten look. So you have to go through several times and pick out the ones that you're going to press. You're also got such less concentration of juice because what happens is this bacteria sucks out the water, concentrates the sugar levels, and then you really get so much less yield. So it's just so much more work goes into making these wines.
Well, it's something that's to be enjoyed this time of year.
Or any time of year.
Coming, absolutely. In fact, you've got a way to enjoy it because you still got the sale coming up, right?
We have a dollar sale coming up. It's
sale.
unlikely that you'd find some Botrytis wines. Yeah, they are a little bit more expensive, but they can be an alternative to ice wine, which we all know is kind of expensive.
Lovely, yeah.
Or you can spend quite a bit more. It just depends on what region that you want to experiment with.
Well, I'll tell you, like I say, it's always an education when Bill is here. And what you can do is just go on into Premier and you can ask about this. In fact, Bill even leaves us his email. You can go ahead and email Bill your questions. Maybe you're having a specific dinner coming up and you want to know, hey, what should I go in and ask for? I'm serving duck or I'm serving beef. Bill@premiergroup.net. He's so happy to steer you in the right direction. And you can also email the store about all of these things that they carry. If you're wondering if they carry a certain line, www.premiergroup.net, or visit the store. Transit Road is the one Bill's at, 565-3020, and try this yourself. I think you're really going to be surprised. Thanks, Bill. This is awesome. And we want to let everybody know the preceding segment was brought to you by the Premier Group.
The preceding segment was sponsored, and portions of the AM Buffalo and Buffalo Weekend programs are sponsored. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of WKBW-TV or the host.